I know that new dungeon masters and game masters often feel like they're not going to be ready to start that campaign they've been looking to run. And the truth is, you probably never will be fully ready until you finally sit down and start to fumble your way through what you've got. So past that point, once you start to become familiar with what it is you're doing, even on a minimal level, the conversation is always about what can we do better? What should we avoid doing? So today we've got some do's and don'ts in starting a campaign. And this conversation is actually, I think, pretty productive. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to iCast Guidance, your weekly Dungeons & Dragons and TTRPG podcast, where every week Rich, Garrett, and I pick up a subject around the culture of gaming and discuss it with you. So without further ado, sharpen up those daggers. We're going to get started right now. So we're rolling.
Oh, we're rolling.
Rolling on a river.
Oh my God.
Rolling.
When Rich sings into the microphone.
Good morning.
Good morning, you guys. PAX is just a few days away.
I can't wait.
I'm excited. I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to going.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot on the itinerary too. This isn't just like we're going to roll down there and wander the floor. We have stuff to do.
I bought a big new bag to bring to PAX with me.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Rich has got a brand new bag.
Jealous.
To put all my goodies in, all my signed calendars of Ginny D.
I already have one. I have a signed DM's guide.
I need the 2025 one.
I'm bringing the old Dungeon Master's guide so that I can see if I can get a few more signatures in that. I've got goals.
Nice.
Anyway, did you guys see Elon Musk's tweet? Dead silence.
I hate him.
I saw an interesting take on this, though, that I kind of wanted to bring up. Elon Musk tweeted out, "Let's make D&D great again," because he's threatening to buy Hasbro now, right? And everybody's like, oh, great. Because you remember what happened to Twitter.
Hey, he did a great job with that.
Did a great job with that. But I saw an interesting take on this. And I can't lie. I thought it was kind of cool.
Hold it.
Should I hold it?
Hold it.
All right. Well, you guys can think of what you want. You guys can think of what you want for that. Put in the comments. Give us your hot take on that. Would Elon Musk buying Hasbro be a good thing or a bad thing for Dungeons and Dragons?
I don't know. Will he be worse than the current CEO? Probably not.
Look, I think if there's ever a time to start designing your own TTRPG, we're in that time. Everything is so volatile right now. We've got exciting new ones coming out. We got Cosmere coming out. We got Daggerheart coming out. We got Shadow Dark just hit we're playing some really cool new ones. Right?
Yup.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And we're going to check out more at PAX.
That's the thing.
And we're going to bring them back to you.
We are going to actually record our next podcast at PAX from our room. We're going to record that. We're going to be looking around on the floor on Friday and Saturday. So that Sunday morning, when we come to the recording equipment, we're going to have some things to report to you. So I think that's going to be kind of exciting too.
Very exciting. Can't wait.
So we got a comment to read from just like 20 minutes ago. We had somebody pop in. So last week we were talking about travel, fixing travel in your D&D campaign. And that I thought that went off really well. We're going to do another video where we have 3 more ways to fix travel, right? We did 3 ways to fix travel. Now we're going to do 3 more ways to fix travel.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a listener named Macopy6571 say, excellent content. Tips are immediately usable at the table. Is there a reference document available, or should I spend an hour transcribing weather tables? Well, Macopy, as some people know, our dream is to get all of these documents made into PDFs that are usable, and we offer up somehow. And we've made a few. Like I made one that was based around critical strikes. It's sort of sitting in the hopper waiting to go. They look really cool. Like they're made on like they're PDFs, but they're like on this parchment background and they've got like all kinds of, I think they're designed really well. So the one for fixing travel and creating weather tables and different kinds of like, I want to do some exploding tables around things. We're making them. And my fear is that with the holidays and with PAX, there's still going to be a month or 2 off. So we're working on that. But I really appreciate you mentioning that to us.
Oh, yeah. I've seen these firsthand and they are, oh my God, chef's kiss.
They're
so
juicy.
Satisfying.
They're juicy.
Yeah.
They're nice. We got to figure out how to get them out there, though.
Well, I always have this fear of putting things out in the world when I don't have a lot to back them up with. So it's like, I don't want to put one PDF out in the world. I want to have 10 made so that I can start to put them out as I make the new ones,
We're making a little catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. It might be a members thing on the YouTube. We'll see.
We'll figure out a way to get them to you. So today we're talking about the topic of the do's and don'ts of starting a D&D campaign from both player standpoint and the DM standpoint.
And this is a popular one, I think, that people need because, all the time new people are starting new campaigns.
Well, yeah. And I mean, we see lots of little videos out there on, individual topics around this, like, how to world build or how to run a campaign 0 or a session 0. So those are individual things. I think we're trying to look for, what to do and what not to do when getting started to kind of keep you on track, keep you from getting derailed.
I think we got a couple of good things to talk about, kind of bulk it together.
Well, that's what I'm curious about with you two. Like as the DM, I know you guys have had your praises and your complaints. Garrett's laughing already. Shit, this is going to be a DM roast, people.
Yeah, right. Listen, Todd, you could do this, and this.
I'm just going to have to put on my big pants and say, okay, go ahead, slam me.
You've had a pretty interesting way of starting a few of our campaigns.
Well, let's start. Let's pick either a do or a don't from your point of view, and one of you jump in.
I got you. Let me start right here.
All right, you hit it, Rich.
Rich has got it.
So, my favorite way of starting campaigns, and I can't say I'm the first one to do this. If you watch Dimension 20, you know what I'm talking about. But there are silhouettes and scenes, right? So you would start individually with one of the characters. You can roll a dice to decide who you start with or something. And then you give them a little scene, what they would be doing at this moment, right? Maybe they're at home hanging out with the family or something. Or maybe they're at work, slinging bales of hay, doing whatever. Role play with them for a little bit, establish their world and what it looks like when no one's watching, and do this with all the characters, and then have a reason for them to come together. Maybe there's a event happening in the town square. Maybe there's a circus coming or something, whatever brings them together.
So this kind of functions as in session 1, how we would sort of open everything up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you would start out with the individual scenes.
I love that.
It does a lot of things. It gives people their individual time to shine and show what their character is about, And
what do you do then in that case? What do you do for somebody who's not totally comfortable with the whole role play aspect? Because that's a lot of pressure early on.
I got you right here.
I was going to say, especially with new people, but go ahead. Yeah, do it.
I've done it before. This one person was a hired hitman for a local crime boss, right? I started them with a stealth operation just outside of the house they were supposed to break into. So instead of role play, it was a lot of sneaking and combat.
More of a tactical thing.
Mm-hmm. But it still showed what their character was about.
Oh, and so then they're rolling skill checks and they're kind of participating more in a mechanical aspect of the game.
Exactly.
Okay. So then in that case, the DM steps in to kind of fill in some of those areas where somebody might not be comfortable role playing.
Yeah, more of the narrative options. The DM's going to give you that a little more than the player.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. That's really, I love that. Okay. All right. Garrett, what do you got?
I like that.
You got one for me?
On how to start a campaign?
The nature of the podcast is what it is. You can go either way you want. I don't care.
Well, coming from the player side, because I've never DM'd, I'm going to throw a don't out there.
Okay.
And this isn't right off of starting. This might be a little bit into the campaign.
Okay.
But I'm going to say, coming from the player's aspect, DM, don't give your players 5 different quests to go on.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced this in campaigns I've been in where, there's this bandit group you got to take care of, this pack of, trolls or whatever you got to take care of, this, that. You got to be the hero here, the hero there. It's going to pull your party in so many different directions. And it's actually coming from a player and a party aspect. It's almost frustrating because you don't know which way to go next.
Well, without trying to sound defensive, because I know where this is coming from and I'm guilty of this. But I would like to sort of qualify to the listeners how that actually happens, because I don't think any DM starts off their campaign by saying, all right, you have 5 things to do. That's not the way it goes. What winds up happening, and this is actually going to be a don't for me as well, and it's a way to prevent what you just explained, but let me kind of explain how all of this sort of happens is, as a DM, you have some setting. You guys are all in the tavern. Like, let's start with the cliche. You're all in the tavern and everybody's kind of like talking. Some hook to start this whole thing off is going to appear. So the party might start asking questions, and you might start by being in the tavern. Then you might go over to general provisions to start to prepare yourself for whatever it is you're going to do. You are talking to NPCs. Each of those NPCs might have their own flavor, backstory, whatever. And what happens is they all have their own individual stories to tell. And that is what injects the potential for other hooks to play in. So my don't would be, in not creating too many quests or goals, is allow all or most of the NPCs to point towards the one thing that you want to start off with to some degree, meaning make the first hook for your adventure something that's affecting everyone in the town as a whole, or everyone's at least aware of. They're not affected by it, but they're aware of it. This way, they all sort of talk towards the same mission and not create just by kind of, secondary or tertiary kind of narratives. They don't create other things. Like, for example, you guys all have to go and investigate a cave system because it's been taken over by a group of bandits. Let's play the whole Lost Mine of Fandelver kind of scenario to some degree. You got to go investigate that, right? And you go to general provisions, and the guy in the general provisions talks about how, his son didn't return home from, their grandmother's house that they went to 3 months ago because they were on the North Road. And you know what I mean? All of a sudden, now it's a different story.
As far as like staying focused, right? You want to kind of bite on whatever hook the DM gives you. You don't want to just like let it flail and get distracted by doing 10 million things. There is a certain amount of like, all right, I see what you're trying to do here, DM. I'm going to give you the layup,
Yeah. All right, let's back up a little bit, though. Let's head over to session 0 for a few minutes, because one of the big do's of starting a campaign is you got to hold a session 0. We all kind of know this already, and most of our listeners know what that is. In case you don't, Rich, what's a session 0?
A session 0 is a session before you actually start playing, when you establish the wants and the not wants of the game, right? You're going to talk about what kind of game do we want? What's okay at this table? What do we not accept? All these kind of things. What's the setting like? Maybe how we can like build our characters around the setting or around each other. It's just all the things you need to talk about before actually getting to playing.
Right.
Yeah, I when we first started playing years ago, we didn't necessarily do this, and we've definitely incorporated it more often now. And I think it helps a lot to come to the table even before you create a character. Figure out your setting, work around the table with your, party, unless it's a scenario where like maybe your party members don't know each other. But, I like that, sitting around the table, creating it based off of the setting. But I think a session 0 is a good spot for the DM to like lay an outline for what to expect.
Yeah. And for DMs out there, if you have new players coming to the table, a problem that we always run into when we play Dungeons and Dragons is we have problematic players from time to time. And it's just because they don't.
No, we don't.
Rich, you were one of them.
I'm glad someone said it.
I'm just kidding.
Roll a death save.
Roll a death save. But, and there's all kinds of different problematic players, right? We have the people that have main character syndrome, right? We have people that kind of have this, now I'm going to draw a blank here.
Loot goblins.
Or murder hobos, or, there's all kinds of people that they become a problem for the adventure, right? Okay. So how do you, at session 0, with a new player, establish a kind of norm for them that says, I know how to kick this in the butt before we even get started? You tell your new players, as a DM, I'll be checking in with you from week to week between sessions about how it's going for you. What do you like? What don't you like? And then I will also give you feedback on your play at the table. This way, if someone comes out of the gate being a murder hobo, or someone has main character syndrome, when you check in, you can say, so look, there are 5 people at the table, And while your character's backstory and everything is really exciting, you need to give people some space. This way you establish that norm.
Yeah, I think, having that conversation before is important, right? Because it gets everybody on the same page and you can kind of avoid problems down the line, because you don't want these things to pop up like 30 sessions in, right? And someone's still being a murder hobo and we haven't gotten anywhere in the campaign. It's like, all right, let's just nip it in the butt.
Right
before we start.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. I think it's also a good place. One thing that we don't really talk about that often is in session zeros, I like to talk about how like expectations from the campaign and what your players want, and also what the DM wants. Like, maybe the DM doesn't want to, sideline into every single bar in the story and whatnot. And, you could set those expectations at that session 0 to, flow the campaign or something.
Yeah, make things move more easily. One of the things I think is so exciting about session 0 is let's just forget for a minute about expectations, because listen, as a space to sort of make sure everyone's okay in this game and we're all playing the game we want to, I'm not discounting that a bit. But if we set that aside for a minute, we look at another aspect of session 0 that I love. We're really sort of laying the groundwork for our story to thrive in. And so it's sort of like, if I say to you, hey, what if we're not all fantastic characters? What if we all have problems that are in our ability scores? So I say as a DM, listen, everybody is allowed to have a single +2 in their ability scores, but everybody also must have a negative in an ability score somewhere. I want you to have a serious flaw. I want you to have something that is a serious weakness, something that makes the game more challenging, right?
I mean, you don't want to walk around with the Avengers.
Well, not only that, but I want there to be a conflict. I want you as a character to have conflict somewhere where, you're really strong, but you're not smart.
Yeah.
You're really charismatic, but you tend to be, I'm trying to think of something, you're charismatic because you've got a decent charisma and a decent dexterity. In other words, you've got kind of the moves, right? But your wisdom sucks. You tend to talk about only yourself or,
Well, that's the way to make a entertaining story. You need to set up the most dramatic possible circumstances you can, so that you have something engaging down the line. It takes a little bit of prep. If you all come to the table with not, the most dramatic circumstances, you may just have a kind of run-of-the-mill experience,
I think the DM also has to play into that, though, because a lot of times my characters, most of the times, charisma is an easy stat to dump, unless you're playing a certain character that needs that, or class that needs that, I should say.
You're not often a bard, but go ahead.
No, I'm not. But, if you're just dumping charisma, I think the DM then needs to play into that a little bit. When that character comes into the town, you go into that bar, be like, what are you doing in here, ugly, or something like that?
Oh my God.
Sorry, I went that way.
Facts. Like, you don't look like you belong in here.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a negative charisma character,
you do everything with no charisma, like the way you walk.
Yeah,
it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah. But the DM's got to play into that. If the DM's going to require kind of a negative attribute, make sure that you continue with that throughout the campaign.
You know what I love about this is when we're talking. So first of all, for you guys that are coming to this podcast and listening to us, we have notes that we sort of generate around our topic for the day, but we don't have scripts. We kind of just riff and have a good time talking about this. And what I love about that is somebody always brings up something that becomes a topic for the next podcast. And I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great to have a podcast around how to play negative ability scores from the player and DM standpoint, which I think could be really fun.
That's incredible. We should do that.
Stay tuned for that one, people.
Foreshadowing. All right. I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to bring us back with a possible do.
Give us a do.
I think you could start mid-combat. Start your campaign in the middle of a fight.
Instead of the standard, you meet in a tavern.
Yeah, start it in a fight. There's already circumstances. You guys are already together. And then you can flash back if you need to talk about like the characters individually, or you can flash back as a whole. You know?
I love that. Wait. So you're starting off in combat. And then I wonder, it would be coolest if at the end of every turn order, when you're about to go to the top of the order, there's a flashback.
Ooh.
Yep. Let me hit you with something crazier. What if you start with the BBEG fight?
Okay. Tell me more, because I'm curious.
The beginning of the campaign.
Oh, wow. Wait, so it begins, but then we go back in time, and that's where everybody begins the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like foreshadowing.
That, there could be an element of, wanting to change your fate after seeing it, or there could be an element of, I know how this is going to end, so this is different. I don't know,
I think that could be really good for maybe not a full campaign, but a smaller campaign, like a one shot or so, or a mini shot type thing.
Yeah, I agree, Garrett. But let me kind of jump in and say where this could sort of play nicely into a larger campaign. Because one of the things I design from when I'm designing, a story framework is I always work backwards. I feel like working backwards is the best way to tell a story. So ultimately, start at the end. What is it you want to accomplish with what you're doing here? So if we're going to do a full-size campaign here, like a long-term forever campaign, maybe take what Rich just said and break it down into segments. So it's like, all right, what's the big bad that's at the end of level 5? What gets everybody from that level? That to me is a marker, right? So there's a big bad at level 5. Great. Let's take that, decide what that's going to look like, have that as the beginning of our session. And then as we flash back, that gives the DM an opportunity to take that working backwards. In other words, what are the story beats that lead up to fighting that big bad? Let's take you through that now. You kind of know where you're going to end. Now, of course, you're not fighting the big bad at the beginning. I'm assuming, Rich. I'm running away with what you're saying.
No,
here.
pop off. I like the
But if you're going to start off your campaign with fighting the big bad and then flash back, you obviously don't know the outcome. You haven't finished that fight. You just realize that you inevitably will be in that fight.
Exactly. You're showing how exciting this campaign could be when you get to a certain moment. You know what I mean? It's like a hook.
This is going back to your scenes or your what you said before.
You're figuring out my pattern.
But no, like this is going back to your scenes. What if that is a dream sequence for one character, and you're playing out this dream sequence and they're seeing into the future, and then they start meeting? Because if you're the DM and you have a description of all your players, and you play out that story beat of, tackling down the dragon or whatever, and in those descriptions, you give the other players, but then they start meeting those players. Yeah. I love this idea.
I got you here, but I need to take this for a second because I love these ideas. I run my games kind of like it's a film, right? And I'm all about pacing and scenes and character development, right? But this level of storytelling needs to be handled by, players that know how to do it, because you can easily become a main character if you had the dream and you're the one assembling the group.
Okay. Well, that's a good point.
What I mean? You need to know how to role play without just, metagaming or something.
But let's talk about how this scenario, this thing we're talking about here, could really contribute to character development and create a sense of backstory. Because, let's think of Stormlight Archive and Way of Kings, how that book sort of is constantly going 7 years before, 3 months prior, it's moving around in the timeline quite a bit. So if it's not a dream, I like the dream idea, but let's just say for a minute, it's not a dream. Let's say they actually start off the campaign right in the middle of the big bad battle. Okay. And then all of a sudden the DM at the end of 2 turn sequences says, we're going back 2 years in time. And you go back 2 years in time and everyone's sitting in this tavern. And who walks into the tavern but the person that's the big bad that they're going to fight in 2 years' time?
And maybe they're a friend at the moment, something insane.
Yes, correct. All of a sudden that person is now an ally, and the party's going to be like, what the fuck? This is, how confusing is this? What is it that we're going to uncover? All right. So I think of the movie Memento.
Yes.
All right. Like Memento, where you see the last scene at the beginning of the movie, and then you work backwards in 15-minute increments, going backwards. And by the time you get to the beginning of the movie, everything has changed.
Yep.
And you're like, oh my God, I never would have suspected this could start out like this.
There's a beauty in this kind of storytelling.
So I would say that the big do here for everybody, if we're going to stay on track with the topic here, the big do is change it up. Change up the linearity of your story a little bit. Don't always feel like linearity in a story has to go from point A to point Z. It could start at Z. All right, so how about this? Why don't we take a break? We're going to hear some words. And then when we come back from the break, what I would love to get into talking about are a bunch of the don'ts, because I feel like we've done a lot of great do's.
Yeah.
But why don't we jump in, do some don'ts from the player standpoint, from the DM standpoint. We'll fill this out. I'm loving this conversation.
This is awesome.
All right, we'll see you in a few minutes. Hey, esteemed listeners. Listen, if you like what we're up to today and you like the content that we produce here at Wither and Bloom Studios and what we talk about on iCast Guidance, today's request is going to be a little bit different. Sometimes I'm trying to get you to subscribe. Sometimes I'm trying to get you to go over to Patreon and support us. Today, I think I'm going to just ask you to share the word. Tell people that we're out there. Tell people that this podcast exists. Tell people that Wither and Bloom Studios are putting together a good thing. I see comments on our channel all the time that we're underrated, and we really want to grow. We want to talk to more people. We love getting into a bigger community, and I feel like you all can help us do that. So do me a favor this week. Tell a friend we're out there. See if you can get someone to listen. It'd be greatly appreciated. All right, let's get back to the show.
Okay, so we are back from our break and we are starting 3-sentence backstory.
Yeah, we're going to do 3-sentence backstory. Now, for those of you who don't know what this is, in every episode, we play this little mini game where we develop a character backstory in 3 simple sentences. So we're going to lead off with somebody who's going to say where the character's from. The second sentence will be a significant thing that happened in their lives. And the third thing is the thing that led them to adventuring. Rich, you want to start us off?
I was born on a pirate ship.
Oh, shit.
My ship was attacked by a gigantic sea creature, and I was swallowed as a baby, and I grew up inside of this creature's stomach.
So you're from the stomach of a creature in the sea?
Yes.
Oh.
Garrett, you want to go next? Wait a minute. How the hell is Garrett supposed to have a significant thing that happened to him in his life when he was swallowed by a fucking... What's significant after that?
Figure it out.
The significant thing, you took the significant thing. If you had just left, I was on a pirate ship.
Figure it out.
Well, a significant thing that happened in my life. I grew up in the belly of this sea creature. And eventually one day, after years and years of, I guess traveling its intestines, I finally found its way out. I guess that's my event. I don't know.
I have to come up with the thing that led you to adventure after this.
Well, the thing about this is, remember that I didn't specify how big this creature was. What if there's a whole colony of people inside of here that have started a way of life?
Rich, I think this is your backstory, buddy.
It's not. I'll take it though.
All right. I've got to come up with a thing that put this person on the road to adventure. Now, Garrett, you said they found the way out.
They found the way out.
Okay. I'm going to go. I've got this. You said you were, wait, let me just get something real quick. You said you were consumed at a very young age, correct?
As a baby.
As a baby. All right, I'm going to go Plato's Cave on this one. This character had no idea there was an outside world. And so after some exploration and finding the exterior and realizing that this was something that was, the world was a big, massive place. The sky was bright, not dark and dim. You had your eyes took weeks to adjust. I'm going to say the thing that led me to adventure was, God, This is hard. This one's really fucking hard. I love this.
This is what happens when you put me first.
Wow.
Well, given the fact that I'm a survivor, given the fact that I've had to scrape every piece of food from the bile and innards and digestive fluids of a giant sea creature, and that's kind of what I've grown to know, the thing that puts me on the road to adventure is realizing the world is big and I need to see it. I need to get out there and see it. I've been locked in a single tiny place for a long time. I just want to keep moving. So I think that's going to be it.
I love that. I love that.
What a weird backstory.
All right, we scraped that one together.
I think that the start was so creative and out there that like the other ones had to be a little bit tamer.
You would think that because it was your start.
Little main character syndrome there, huh?
Shut up. Shut up.
Let's take this one. We're going to put this one down in our book. We're going to add this one to the book. I think this was good. But main character syndrome that you said that, let's get back to our talk. Let's get back to the do's and don'ts of starting a campaign, because I think we got some good stuff to bring in here, right?
Yeah.
So don't. What was the don't? We got a big don't.
The don't was don't have a party of main characters.
Well, this deserves some qualification. We were talking about this on the break a little bit. And, we know main character syndrome, if we've ever heard of that before, it is this idea that one member of the party, one person at your table dominates. They basically run the show all the time and everyone kind of sits back and lets them do it. But there's another version of main character syndrome that's a little less obvious that I've encountered with the very group that we have right now. So, yeah, the very group we have right now. Yesterday, I felt a little under the weather and I sat down and I watched the extended version of Fellowship of the Ring again. And I realized, oh my God, they work so well together, right? You got 4 hobbits, you got a dwarf, an elf, a human, well, actually 2 humans, and a wizard, right? So all 9 of these people, right? Is that right? 9? Yeah, 9. All 9 of the people in the Fellowship of the Ring come together and they band together as bonded people. They cry over the situation in the Mines of Moria. I won't make any spoilers. If you don't know what happens in the Lord of the Rings at this point, I don't care. But
spoiler warning.
They cry over the loss of one party member. There's another party member that betrays them towards the end of the movie and tries to take the ring. What happens? Aragorn gives him a send-off before he dies that is glorious. But my problem is with the people at my table, everyone is their own main character and no one gives a shit about each other. And everybody's fighting all the time. You guys are all squabbling because everybody wants to have their own identity and nobody's identity could possibly mix, right? So Remy's just a bitch all the time. Cersei's a bitch all the time. Thrud is a bitch all the time. Garrett, you just don't give a shit. So Branmorn doesn't care. Tryphon fucking left. It's like, what kind of party is that?
Wow.
You're lucky none of them listen.
This is a hot take.
Yeah, the goodness is none of the people that play my game listen to our podcast, so nobody cares.
But no, what Todd's saying is totally true. Some of the party members have a connection, but it's like they only care about one other person.
Yeah,
we're a group of 5 right now. We were 6.
So when you start a campaign, how do you get your players, not the characters, but your players to care about characters other than themselves?
Well, I think it's the thing we talked about before, right? You don't have to force them to have an intertwined backstory, right? But you need to play a character that cares. And a lot of the people at our table, weren't a part of that discussion and don't know about that.
Yeah. So here's the don't bring apathy to the table.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not interesting.
It's not.
It's really not interesting to have an asshole in your party.
That's because everybody thinks they're each individually so interesting.
Rich, you're looking at me. You looked at me when you said, don't bring that asshole to your table. Am I the asshole?
No, nobody thinks
Are you self-reporting? Because I did not mean that. You have a guilty conscience right now.
Well, I mean, Todd put it that, my character doesn't necessarily care that much.
Branmorn, you might be the nicest person in the party.
Well,
thank you.
I didn't mean you don't care from the standpoint of you don't give a crap. I mean that you don't necessarily care about every other person's individual drama. You're more interested in the relationship with Thrud, right? You got something going on there, which is actually one of the most appealing parts of the whole campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, how do you as a DM express to your players that this is a party? This is a party of people that needs to work together. And frankly, working against one another is not that interesting. My parties tend to, maybe this is me. I'm going to take responsibility for this as a DM. Why do my players always fight with each other? It's something that I'm doing, I think. And I'm not sure what that is.
I'm going to say it's something contrary. Fighting shows that you care.
Well, okay, but can we fight the enemy for once and not each other?
I don't think that's the problem.
Some internal party fighting is good for, role play.
Yeah.
At some points. I mean, there's been times where back when Tryphon was still there, I wanted to kill him multiple times, but then there was times where, him and I were buddy, bad cop, good cop, bad cop.
Do you remember when I fought Thrud?
Well, yeah. I remember lots of situations where my party members have been fighting with one another. And I have to say, from the standpoint of a DM that wants to start a campaign, I want to know, how do I create bonds, unity, something between my players that makes them work together?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because I don't think fighting is necessarily the problem, right? Because like you said, the end of Fellowship of the Ring, the fact that what happens with Boromir is so interesting when it comes to dramatic storytelling, right? But I guess making them care is something that's harder to do. And I'm trying to think of it at the moment.
Because listen, if we want to create layered characters that have conflict and inner struggles, and no one else in the party really cares that those people have layered conflicts and struggles, then why bother? Why bother? Backstory is not going to mean anything if it only means something to one person. It needs to mean something to the whole group.
That's an incredible statement. Make sure everybody's on the same page before you start the campaign.
In a way, yeah, because, we always struggle with these games. We always struggle with this idea of, well, how do we talk about player agency? Like, how do you get a player so invested in their character that they fear their character will die, right? Because you want the player to be nervous in the moment where they might die. That shows they're connected. On a secondary note, the one just below that, you want your players to also care about the other members of their party. That's harder because now you're asking them to care about somebody other than themselves. So yeah, no, I'm not saying your table is full of narcissists, but we've weirdly got this sort of secondary low layer narcissism that goes on in these games that I don't like.
Well, I think a lot of the times, I've seen DMs make a ruling that they don't want an evil character at their table. I mean, you've made that ruling before. I can totally understand that. But yeah, maybe in like a session 0, you got to work together to make this party like matter and care about each other.
I think even evil characters can care, because evil people aren't evil all the time. Evil people, if they walked around killing every single person, they'd be killed, right? Evil people walk around with a smile and they manipulate people, and they sit down and have drinks with them, and they use them. And that's interesting from a storytelling perspective.
I agree with that. And I think that, I will say this. I think an evil character in a campaign, I would allow it as a DM if I knew that my players were seasoned enough as role players to handle that. Because that's like level 10 shit right there.
Yeah.
Right. If I've got a bunch of level 1 characters that are only interested in themselves, they're always fighting amongst themselves. I'm like, why would I even think about bringing an evil character in here? I don't need it. I've already got enough conflict.
Totally.
How do you get the group to care about each other?
Yeah.
That's the main question.
That's the main question. All right. So we're going to develop another, this is another talking point.
Yeah.
Right. But you guys, listen, if you're out there listening to this and you're a DM or you're sitting at a table where the characters all care about each other, how did you do it? What got you there? Please go over to Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube. Find this podcast there. Comment in the comment section. How did you get your party members to care about each other? That's crucial.
I have an idea, maybe. And it might not answer the question, but, I feel like when creating characters, everybody wants to be different and unique. Well, I mean, like, what's wrong with just having like a few of the same races? You know what I mean? Like a couple humans in the party, they would have a lot in common. Maybe they're from the same town, instead of everybody trying to be from this unique place in the world and looking different and being different. I don't know.
Well, that's okay. Okay, that's surface level, and it's a good start. So back to the Fellowship of the Ring. Sure, the hobbits are going to have a deeper connection than Frodo's going to have to Boromir, right? because they come culturally from similar backgrounds. Fine. That surface level doesn't penetrate through to how the players handle their characters and create that caring at the table.
Hmm.
You know, we need something that solidifies the player and the player's behavior over the character to care, and not always feel like there's some kind of power in squabbling, right?
Are we just projecting and venting all of our frustrations with our campaign out to the world?
Isn't that how everything's done? We're talking from experience, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking players out there and DMs out there to come in and comment. It's like, all right, what do you got going? Like, tell me about your game. Because if it's good enough, I'm just going to dump you guys and go play in their game.
Wow. Wow.
We'd be lost without you, Tom. Don't leave us. Please.
Please.
Who else is going to DM?
I don't know. You've been talking about, what's it called?
Recasting?
Recasting me. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Take it back.
Anyway, what are a couple more don'ts? We've got some other don'ts on the menu here.
Do we want to talk about the one that I had with the DM PC?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Please.
All right.
Please.
One that I found when just getting some ideas about this is, if you're the DM and you're going to introduce a DM controlled, NPC or PC, don't make them the savior of the campaign. Don't make them completely overpower the whole party. Because it's going to take away from the party's, engagement with the story, or, care, maybe. If you always have this savior that steps in, takes control, you're taking it away from your players.
Yeah, I think you should ask yourself as a DM, if you've got that NPC coming in, is how do you make the NPC a beloved character that, is maybe beloved because of their personality?
Make them weak as hell.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But also give them something that the characters care about.
Mm-hmm. One thing that was on that, the person talking about this or whatever that I found online was make them more of a guide or someone that advises the party more than taking control of like power in the party.
Well, I think it's also important that the NPC have their own self-interests that are more important to them as an NPC than the party is. And that will help to keep that division. So the first NPC I think of in this is Gilmore from Gilmore's Glorious Goods, right? Because that character, that NPC, has an infinite supply of shit that they can give to the party. But they also want to make money. They also don't want to, you know what I mean? So there's like a division there. Is that a fair?
No,
I
that's
think
fair.
So. Yeah.
I think also like a good example of this would be like if you, like in Game of Thrones, right? There's Stannis Baratheon, and then who's his right-hand advisor?
Davos.
Sir
Davos. Yeah. What about him?
He doesn't come with a lot of power, right? But he advises Stannis every step of the way, and he's invaluable.
Well, he's also a loved character because of his loyalty, right? He's got loyalty. That's a big one, right? He's not pulling out the sword and defending people, but he also has morals and he has loyalty. These are things that can help make an NPC really strong.
True. Yeah.
Going back to the Lord of the Rings, you got Gollum. He leads, he's the
valuable
guide. He has, it without him, would they have found their way? I mean, did he lead them astray? Yes, some ways, but.
Well, and he's also layered and complex too. He's the character that Frodo says Bilbo should have killed when he had the chance, but Gandalf reminds him that, he has another part to play in this, and, pity can do a lot of things. Yeah, Gollum's got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So I guess the whole thing here is GM or DM controlled NPCs can be, and you want to know what? This is what got us talking about party caring about each other. This conversation, because here I am. We talked about this on the break. Garrett says, I want to talk about this notion of GM controlled NPCs being too powerful and being the hero. And I said, yeah, I don't do that. And Rich looked at me and said, you absolutely do. And named off 5 of them that I've used. And I realized, wait a minute, why do I do that? And I thought, oh, it's because the party doesn't care enough. So I have to inject someone that helps them care.
Wow, you're just avoiding responsibility. You know what I mean? Just putting it all on us. That's crazy.
I mean, it's usually our fault. We talked about this on the break. A lot of the times, if our party is in dire circumstance and we are too dumb to run away as a party, and a
all
group,
we do is fuck around, and you're afraid to let us find out, which is fair.
yes,
It's
Todd will
understandable.
inject some type of savior.
Well, yeah, I'm torn between addressing the savior thing and addressing Rich's thing about me not taking responsibility. But whatever.
No, that's fair. I think just don't make the DMPC stronger than the NPCs. I think it's a big one.
I think the thing I want to point out about this podcast is we're having a lot of really relevant conversations that sort of circle around and orbit around this topic of the do's and don'ts of starting a campaign. But I think what we have to do is condense this a little bit and say, all right, what are we really talking about here? And I think the thing we really are kind of circling is this idea that there are some overarching philosophies that the DM should bring to the table in a campaign that, sort of set the stage and set the ball rolling in a nice, even way. So we know about session zeros, right? But what happens in those session zeros? Like, how can we sort of say, here are some things we're going to have as shortcomings in our players. Here are some things that we're going to build the framework of the world. Maybe my characters can help build portions of the world, so on and so forth. Fine. What are some other philosophies? Let's not have too many adventure hooks right off the bat. Let's have our NPCs point towards a single adventure hook. Let's work backwards. Let's consider starting with a battle with the BBG, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all these things are kind of like these bigger level topics that I think they're more like philosophies rather than bullet points we can check off. Am I right?
Yeah, no. And I think if you can incorporate them, you're off to a really great start,
I'm curious what everybody out there thinks. Like, I wish we had a caller line. We'd be like, all right, let's take caller number 1. What do you as a DM use? I think that could be kind of cool. But put it in the comments. Like, what are your standard operating procedures for starting a campaign that are specific and different from what we've been talking about here?
I have one last one
that
I want to pop in before. If you're wanting to run an official module, I've done this before, and I think it really got my players invested in the module. So I was running Spelljammer, but before I started the events of Spelljammer, I actually ran a different one shot in the same world with their same characters. And it was more so to get them working as a party. It was lower stakes to get them involved. And it really worked. And I just blended the one shot into the actual module.
Like a pre-shot almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I just found it in a totally different book. And I thought it really matched the world. And it made all the difference. They went into the story already kind of established.
I think that's a good way to bring new players also into the fold and give them a certain amount of an understanding of how the game functions.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. But that's just for people that want to run an official module. Maybe that'll help,
One last thing I would advise in the start of your campaign is be careful as a DM of getting your characters equipped with too many OP things too quickly. I feel like too many magic items in the game early on is problematic. Giving them access to too many, legendary items sometimes come into play. And by the time, if you do that at level 2 or level 3, by the time you hit level 8 and 9, you as a DM are going to have a really hard time with those players.
Ain't that the truth?
We've experienced that before.
I don't know. Do we have a lot? I've never seen a lot of magic items.
Okay. This was maybe before you joined our group.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. I've played in that campaign before. So I can attest to that one.
The fucking Horn of Valhalla was a mistake. Okay. That was a mistake. I'm just going to put this out there.
You took that away from us pretty quick.
I did.
Bastard.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that you guys, number one, I think you can all help out. If you're listening to this podcast, jump in, tell us what you do, because I'm curious to keep this conversation going. I want to talk more about this. I want to learn from you. So let's hear more from you guys. And for the rest of you that are listening and always listening, thank you so much. If you see us at PAX, if you see us wearing our Wither and Bloom stuff, come up and say hello to us. Tell us you listen to iCast Guidance. We're going to give you a cool sticker.
And a high five.
And a high five. And, if we don't have too much con crud by then, maybe a hug. But yeah, we would love to see you there. And thank you so much for your support. We love having you along for the ride. Tell your friends about the podcast. We look forward to bringing you the next episode next week. Stay tuned, everybody. Take care, you guys.
Adios.
See ya.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to iCast Guidance. iCast Guidance is produced by Todd Lambricks, Garrett Brennan, and Rich Froman. We drop this podcast every week, and we are looking forward to having you hang out for more. Don't forget to head on over to Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube, follow our channel, and definitely comment on what you see there. We will probably read those on this show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to next time.